Good morning. It's Mark, Plant Medicine Path. Good afternoon, good evening, or wherever you're at today. Today, we're going to redo Troy McFadden. I met Troy a few months back, and he's a certified integration coach. And, we love our integration coaches. Integration's a big part of these psychedelic journeys. So I'm going to let Troy introduce himself this morning, and we'll go from there. Good morning, Troy.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Good morning, brother.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yes, I'm Troy. I'm an integration coach, and I'm going to let you guide me into more detail with questions.
Yes,
Okay.
let's guide today because you're an interesting character. You're over there in the east. You're over there in the Far East, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And you do some integration coaching over there. And let's ask you this first: what brought you here? Because everybody wants to know what got them here.
It's been a long journey
Hmm.
with plant medicines. 38 years. I just
38.
tallied it up the other day.
Wow.
And in that time, there's been a tremendous amount of growth, a tremendous amount of letting go, of course, a tremendous amount of suffering, life being life. But plant medicines have been a constant companion. They
Mhm.
provided me perspective, support, levity. I think that might be the single biggest thing. A joyousness, a lightheartedness, a playfulness
Mm.
in regards to even the worst aspects of life. They tend to have great senses of humor.
Yeah, they do. And I think we all come. I mean, I ask this question all the time, what brought you here? But I think we all know what brings us here. We're just tired of being sick and tired, and that's probably what it boils down to. We've tried everything. We've done it all. We've done the medications. We've done all the routes, and then we found this. And this should have been something that never went away. So this is plant medicines, and plant medicines for us, I mean, for me, and I think we just talked about this prior to the conversation, was in the beginning of my journey I had to do a bunch of plant medicines, but they become more of a tool as you move on. In the beginning, plant medicines were for me to break those walls of my sick thoughts, and those walls were broken, and I needed integration, and integration is the key to all this. I think it's the key to anything, I mean, once you start evolving and changing inside yourself, you need to figure out how to adjust those changes. So go ahead and talk about a little bit about integration.
I'm going to put it very simply, sort of riffing on what you just said. Okay, that happened. Now what?
Now what? Yep.
That's essentially
Yeah.
integration.
Yeah.
Now, to get it a lot more wordy about it, we have this kind of like current of liberation when we pair up with these plant medicines, right? They know how to showcase certain things, to bring forth certain things in us, to cleanse us, to purify us. And they're illuminating,
Yeah.
or they serve to illuminate the things that we need to look at.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly liberating. It can even be emancipating. Of course, there's the immediate neurological rewiring that happens during the period of ingestion and journeying. And then we have to bring it all down and through us in
Mm.
order for it to be as effective as possible through the
Yeah.
current of manifestation. And ultimately, that means like taking whatever visions and whatever aliens, whatever you were exposed to and connected with, and then living the highest truth of that moment to moment in your life.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, I think you nailed it right there. You need to do those two things first. I think plant medicines in the very beginning becomes a cleanse. Like you have to cleanse your cellular inside you. I mean, we call them whatever you want to call them, entities or ghosts or spirits or whatever. I call them traumas because that's what they are. They're traumas that you have to cleanse from your body. You have to cleanse these traumas, and plant medicines cleanse these traumas for you. And then you can spark up those neurons again to help you think a little better. This whole process is a process. This isn't an overnight fix. I don't think there's any such thing as an overnight fix for anything. So I think we
I agree, and it wouldn't be sustainable if it was overnight. That's just
very
not
true.
the way of
Mhm.
things.
Yeah,
And
very
I'm
true.
gonna speak to something you said a bit earlier, and my experience is the same as yours. At first, we're blowing open the top of our heads, we're knocking down walls, we're cleaning out all kinds of trauma from at least this lifetime.
Yep.
And
Hmm.
then then the experience becomes more refined in a sense, more sophisticated. You don't need to take as much or as often. And when you revisit, it's like, okay, we can nibble away at a few things and we'll dust off the shelves and we'll do a bit of house cleaning, but it doesn't tend to be like major things coming forth. At a certain point, we've done the kind of gross work, as it were. And then
Yeah.
again, it's like finish carpentry. It's time for the
Mm,
sanding and the varnishing,
yeah.
the
That's so
polishing.
true. Just gave me chills thinking about that because that's the truth. That is the truth in these medicines. That's the solid truth. You go in and you cleanse yourself. After you cleanse yourself, then you can do the work. I mean, these medicines will really cleanse you, no matter if it's ayahuasca, iboga, San Pedro. I mean, these things will definitely cleanse you. And then once we're cleansed and we can alleviate all that trauma for so many years. I mean, trauma can be anything, right, Chad? Right, Troy? I mean, it can be any single thing, like falling off your bicycle or
Yes,
being raped when you were a young child. I mean, the
absolutely.
the magnitude of traumas you cannot explain for one person to another.
That's very true. And then, of
Mhm.
course, as I alluded to before, there's ancestral trauma, which
Oh,
in a sense
sure.
we're bringing into the world, and it's our responsibility as awakening beings to help heal it.
Let's talk a little bit about that because ancestral trauma, I think, is just through our DNA. And think about our DNA. We're always looking back at our grandparents and our great grandparents and our grandfathers and our great. So we're searching that back, but we want to go and we want to deny that these things are being passed down to us. But they certainly are. They're being passed down to us through the DNA process. Not what that we lived it, but they're passed down to us through our DNA. And wow, that's deep. I just got myself deep. So we have
Great.
to really we have to understand that, really understand that because we don't look ancestral. And I think when we come on this path a little bit longer, that ancestral becomes a little more important because we know it. It's a knowing.
Yes, our culture is largely ignorant, if not in denial about it, but lots of indigenous cultures, I would say most in the history of humanity, uh, are in touch with their ancestors. There's ancestor worship and there's a relationship there. And I would say also, it doesn't only come through our DNA, that's like the physical expression of it. There's also an energetic lineage. In any imbalance, and also in wonderful positive things too, but everything gets transmitted on various levels through the generations. And then to the degree it's unconscious and we haven't dealt with it, we haven't processed it, it continues to live.
Mm. It does, doesn't it? It does. So integration. How do we break it? What do we do? Let's step through it. Let's talk about integration, especially for the men in this community. Men
Sure.
in this community is very, I mean, I think it's a 70-30 ratio right now. I mean, the women dominate healing. I mean, they just do. They
Mhm.
dominate wanting to better themselves and break through all these things. But for men, for the most part, we're really fearful of this. For me
Yes.
myself in the beginning, I was fearful. So for men in general, integration is hugely important.
Yes, I'm glad you're speaking to the men, because as men, one of the most important things we need to do is get beyond our own conditioning that's laid on us by other men, and that is also reinforced in fairness by women who have drank the Kool-Aid.
Hmm.
Well, we have to be strong and we have to be consistent and we can't be vulnerable and we can't be open and we can't be loving with each other. So, one of the first things men need to do is to get present with themselves and acknowledge their
Hmm.
fear, the tremendous fear and insecurity that comes from being incarnate as a man.
And if that lineage goes deeper, deeper, and deeper, and if that's been indoctrinated you do it for so long, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get rid of that. For me, at least, I
Absolutely.
think it is.
Absolutely, which is why,
Mhm.
in part, it's so helpful, if not necessary, to have other men who embody certain aspects of masculinity that other men can feel safe with. Like, okay, this doesn't mean X or Y or Z. Like, you present as masculine. I'm not saying this is the only way by any means, but it's very helpful to be able to say, yes, I can inhabit this. I can live this energy. I can do it in a healthy way. And it's okay also to be open and vulnerable and cry and yell and scream to the universe that you need help. That's not unmasculine. It's very
Absolutely.
human. And
Mhm.
it's also part of integrating. since we're on this topic, the masculine and feminine energies within ourselves, no matter what our gender is.
And who's telling us, Troy, that it's not okay to do these things? Why isn't it okay? It's so crazy that it's not okay. I mean, I think crying for me was my biggest purge that I needed to do over my process of years. I mean, sitting in my room and crying my eyes out and not even knowing why the fuck I'm crying was the best
Mhm.
thing that has ever happened to me. The best. I don't cry as much nowadays as I used to in the past. I used to cry in the beginning of this, I used to cry at the drop of a dime. And I think that was because I had so much unhealed trauma, so much unhealed that everything would make me cry.
Sure.
And I think now it's more of a joyous cry when I cry, like, "Man, I overcame that. Holy shit."
Yeah, tears can be beautiful,
Yeah.
right? It's just when we resist the
Mhm.
just like when we in an ayahuasca journey, if we resist vomiting, it's a lot
Mhm.
more traumatic.
Yeah.
There's a lot more suffering in it. If we recognize it as like, I'm releasing and I'm letting go, and yes, there's discomfort in it, etc., but it's all part of this larger process that we can relate to in different ways as we're awakening. And it's the same thing with tears. Beautiful. I love that, because even in this sorrow, even in this pain, even in this hurt, there's caring, there's sweetness, there's love.
Yeah. And there's release. You're releasing something when you're crying.
Sure,
You're releasing
sure.
whatever it is. I mean, it's something inside of you. So men is a very big factor in this community. It should be adapted more. We should be talking about it more every day. I mean, we got to think about these wars these men through, this PTSD. And, I'm not just talking men go to war, women go to war just as much. But, you know, it's a big thing right now, men in this community. It's come up a lot. And I think we need to conquer that, bring it to the next level. Because the women are great. The women are there. The women understand this. The men, we
And
certainly don't.
they do, bless them and all of their wisdom.
Mhm.
And yes, men were very, very traumatized.
Yep.
And that's why I'm
Uh-huh.
saying the first thing we need to do is slow down, if not
Mhm.
pause, if not stop, and acknowledge the possibility, at least within ourselves, even just to ourselves, not necessarily with other men yet or anyone else. Maybe it's easier with a woman that you feel safe with, a woman in your life
Right.
or whatever. The possibility that we are deeply wounded, and that is a first step. But ultimately, it's really up to men to change this. We, in our trauma, have
Yep.
asserted rather our dominance. We've laid our trips on women, each
Yep.
other, this world. It's hyper masculine. It's massively imbalanced. It's totally unhealthy. And we've done it to ourselves. And it
Absolutely, we have.
needs men to stop doing harm, and then
Yep.
start using your masculinity in healthy ways and loving ways and supportive ways and caring, protective, nurturing ways. Some of those qualities are often ascribed to the feminine, but there is a unique masculine way to do those things too. In fact, it is an inherent part of the healthy masculine.
There is. I mean, we're such an unhealthy masculinity in this society nowadays. It's disgusting. I mean, go drink your beer and cover your trauma. Okay, it's not how we're supposed to be living. It's not how we're supposed to be living in this world. We're just
It's
not.
not right. It's not natural. It's not how we were designed. So we're deeply conditioned, and it's
Mhm.
reinforced constantly in all kinds of ways. So it
I mean,
really does take a waking up and an owning of the responsibility involved, and a lot of bravery. And this is where you get to be, classically masculine. It takes a lot of courage and a
yep.
lot of bravery to be
Well,
vulnerable.
yeah,
Ask any
exactly.
ask any woman. Ask
Mhm.
any woman, and if they trust you, they will tell you that, because they
Yep.
know, because they live it every day.
They do. That's why I think people like me and you have to be vulnerable. I mean, we think about men in general. I mean, listen, most of us are traumatized when we first are born, when we get that circumcision cut. That's our first sense of traumatization, and nobody talks about that. Nobody. That's a wicked subject. But you know what? A lot of us men have been traumatized about that, and I never really thought about that until I was 50 years old. It's crazy.
It's It's crazy, and it's genital mutilation. It's an
Right.
abuse of your
Mhm.
body as soon as you come into this world. Once
As soon as
again,
you come in.
literally insane.
Insane. And I really never put two and two together like that until I got on this path and wondered, you know, that's crazy. That's crazy we continue to do this. But, you know, that's another thing that we were indoctrinated with or taught that this was the right way to do it. But, we need to change our thought process, and I think it's changing. I think the whole world's coming to a change right now drastically. We talked about before we came on this call that you're over in the Far East over there, and we're here in the States. Totally different values on how we think. I mean, we're being murdered and shooting everybody every day over here. Over in the Middle East, over in the Far East over there, it's very rare to hear of a shooting or a killing or anything of that nature. So we've done something in America to really mind boggle our brains. And I wish we would stop.
So do I. Again,
Mhm,
first do no harm. Stop. Certainly in Asia, superficial, at least harmony is much more highly valued. Dignity, respect, social graces, etc., are a much higher priority. And of course, they have their stuff to deal with as well. But it's not what we have to deal with in America. It's not as gross. It's not as violent. It's not as rough hewn, unrefined. We're just this like spoiled, gluttonous adolescent who's had, pretty much everything they've wanted for a long time, right?
for a
Through their
long
life,
time.
is being forced to actually have to mature and is resisting it in every way it can,
Yeah, you're
violently.
very true. Forced to have to mature. Very true statement. We're being forced to have to mature. Most of society is being forced to have to mature.
Yes. Yes, and we have to, or we're going to die. Like the human race and all the other beings on this planet are going to perish, with
Mhm.
rare exception, if we don't change really fast to a great deal really quickly.
Yeah. So one thing that we really like to do here at the Plant Medicine Path is remove the stigma around these medicines. And you look at myself and you look at yourself, and you know, we're looking like normal average guys. We do this medicines. We have great lives. We have great careers. We have we have a passion of something, or for myself, I can only speak for, of something that has changed my me like nothing else has ever changed. So why are these illegal? Why are these pushed under the shelf? Why has it become such, now it's not so much, but it we have we have made this medicine such a negative culture that it's really hard to get us out of it. And it's only medicine that will get you off all these addictive medicines. It is so baffling to me that we continue this dialogue. When is it going to be gone? When is it going to dissipate? When are we going to? And I see it's happening slowly, but it's not happening quick enough for me. When is it going to? What do we got to do?
Of course, I don't know, but again, it's going to happen very quickly, or it's not going to happen at all, and we'll have much bigger problems. I really do believe that one of the best chances we have to survive, to move through this bottleneck, and to enter a new golden age, I'll call it that,
Yeah,
is plant medicine. Plants have been here a lot longer than we have. They're a lot
oh,
wiser than we are, and they're the protectors of
yeah.
the planet. And
Hmm.
they, through us, are doing what they need to do in order for them to survive, and in order to help us survive.
And the pharmaceutical society utilizes plants every day in all their medicines. That's what's
Yes.
baffling to me. Every single medicine has a plant substance in it. We've gone to the plants forever. The plants have been, you know, I don't like want to sound crazy or off the wall here. The plants have been around for eons before civilization. I mean, this is how people were healed and fixed. And, we could talk about the Bible, how the Bible was written through psychedelic journeys, through the acacia tree. I mean, we can keep going on and on and on until when? Until we started this drug war back in the 60s that really damaged a lot of us because we wouldn't be where we are today if that didn't happen. I don't feel society would be as messed up as we are today, because we are messed up, Troy.
Yes, absolutely. And the drug war and wars started before the 60s, marijuana in the 30s and the opium wars. I mean, it's been this fraudulent, destructive entity that has, sort of infected humanity, this whole war on drugs, war with drugs, because let's also look at that, right? Many wars are fought by soldiers who are pumped up on amphetamines or
Right.
opium or something, right? Because how else can you get over the natural resistance to actually killing a fellow human?
Right.
And that really connects with your earlier point, as it were. The reason that these are illegal is because the powers that be are desperately afraid of them. If we wake up and we see how fraudulent all of our institutions are, there's going to be a revolt. The elite will lose their power.
It's happening,
So,
my friend.
of course, they're pushing back as hard as they can. And
It's
yet, and yet, it is happening.
happening. It's definitely happening. And it's just going to take more and more of this, more and more of this awareness, because you can't stop it. You can't stop the social media aspect. You can't really stop any of this. But we have to go back to, again, we're not enforcing, in no way, shape, or form do I enforce to that these are things that we do every single day. You know, there's a process to all these medicines. There's definitely a process. And it's taken people like me and yourself and others to have learned this process. And, once we alleviate and get these traumas out, I mean, we actually do heal at a cellular level. And that cellular level is life changing. I mean, I'm no longer an addict to anything. Like, an addict, what is that? But I was an addict 3 years ago, and I can really relate to that. But
Sure.
when you heal at a cellular level, you're healed. You are healed. And it's a great feeling.
Absolutely, it is. And I think we can even take a look at the concept of addiction and apply it to virtually all of our lives,
Yep.
right? Because if you expand it to include attachment,
Hmm.
right, then virtually all of us have certain predispositions, certain hangups, certain things that we need or feel like we need, etc. And all of those are the ties that bind. They all contract us versus letting go, where we can expand and allow and accept and not be beholden to any forces.
Yeah,
Freedom,
freedom. I think that's all we're looking for is freedom. A little bit of freedom, you know?
because that's what we truly are. We
Yeah,
are inherently free. We are
yeah,
freedom itself. We've
yeah.
forgotten it's okay, and this is how we learn. It's okay. This is the process, and plants are helping us.
So what do you do over there at Wisdom Warrior Coaching, Troy? What do
I
you do there?
coach.
Yeah,
I do a lot of business coaching. I'm working with a lot of startups and founders and such at the moment. Once
yep,
in a while, some of these things can come into the fold, but mostly I'm just coaching from this place of awareness, from this level of understanding. I'm not necessarily bringing up mushrooms in the context of a business call, but increasingly, I've started, I guess several years ago, I started kind of organically and then more formally started integration coaching with psychedelics. People ask me, I'm facilitating on events in medicine circles and such. And then so I'm like, okay, wait a minute, I have all these coaching skills and all this coaching training. I'm applying it here. Why don't I actually just start doing it, more formally because it's needed. And also it's a way to honor the medicines, what they've given me and what they've given humanity, and it's just my little part to help things along. Just one small cog in a very big wheel through eons.
that's awesome. That's beautiful. And I guess, it's got to be working, right? What you're doing.
It would appear so.
Yeah, it's got to be working. There's results because we wouldn't keep doing this if there weren't.
Sure. Very powerful and sometimes dramatic results. And again, the integration process, I think it's essential. I don't know if that's inherently true. That's just my belief, but it's
What is that?
certainly.
The integration process? You think it is?
Yeah, because no matter how powerful the initial aha moments are, the
Mhm.
initial, sort of temporary enlightenment might be, if we don't actively and consciously work to bring all of those things into a practice or a series of
Mhm.
practices, then they
Right.
fade just because the old
Absolutely.
superhighways are so deeply
Mhm.
ingrained.
Yeah, because you'll go right back. you'll go
Yeah,
right back.
sure.
It's you have to change some part of, that's why I feel that, 10% is the medicine, 90% is integration. We use the word so vaguely because we don't really know what it is, but I think you nailed it earlier. So, I mean, integration is the key to, I think, I feel all these medicines, all these spaces, no matter what we do, but also picking up those different modalities like breath work, like meditation. We have to retrain our thoughts, I mean, on our mind process. Because I can tell you right now, probably people that are going to be listening to this podcast or whatnot, they're all through that monkey mind process. That remember that monkey mind that we had before psychedelics that will never stop. For some reason, psychedelics stop that monkey mind. They do. For
Yes,
me, at least it did. For me, it did,
sure.
and for so many others, it has a way to stop that.
Sure, temporarily at the very least,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
it's up to
Temporary.
us because you can't
Yeah.
be on acid all the time.
You can't. You are
As a
so true.
as a friend of mine said, right? So, we have these other tools that we can use to bring us into the same states of consciousness and reinforce the states of consciousness that we were shown, that we were
Mhm.
offered as a gift when we were, under the influence of the medicine directly.
Perfectly said. Also, like one huge modality that I think everybody needs to pick up, or most people should pick up once they're on this path, is that breath work. To learn how to
Yes.
breathe properly again is such an essence to living free. Because
Oh,
when
completely.
people watch this, how many of these people out there are not going to be breathing properly? I'm going to say
Most,
70%. Most.
most.
You're right. Most.
And yet, what an opportunity, because that is something that you are actually doing all of the time,
Every
except
day.
when you're holding your breath, which is a very common habit that we have
Absolutely.
because we're
Me too.
resisting reality. We're braced against it. We're usually doing it unconsciously.
Hmm.
And yet, just to the degree that we apply our attention to it and we start working with it and we start letting go and we
Hmm.
understand the physical mechanics and the energetic aspects of it, wow, that in and of itself
Hmm.
potentially hugely transformative.
Yep. Breath work is very transformative. Probably the beginning, first step we should tell everybody on this path. Just breathe, my friend. Just breathe. And breathe through your
Yeah.
nose, not your mouth.
Yes. Yes.
You know, it's
Absolutely.
just
Yeah.
it's so beneficial.
Yeah. There's so many benefits to just breathing in through the nose, especially sometimes breathing out through the mouth is appropriate and maybe
Right.
best served. But as a general baseline default, close thy mouth, caveman or cavewoman, use the nose. It
Mhm.
stimulates, it filters, it warms, it directly oxygenates our brain. I mean, I could go on, but I won't.
Quickly too. Quickly. We'll forget about how mad we were 2 seconds ago once we start breathing. It's such an amazing process. It is. It truly is. So, what other modalities do you like to share with people? What other things besides the breath work and the meditation? What are other things you feel are important?
I think somatic elements are really important, in part because we're so attached to physicality. So physical reminders to bring you into the spirit, as it were. Simple things like taking a few seconds to rub your fingers together or wiggle your toes inside your shoes,
Mm,
if you want to be discreet about it. Things to act, tactile things, things to actually associate with mindfulness through our bodies. And because, in part, so many of our traumas are locked in our bodies, as you said, right, on a cellular level, on the level of physical mechanics, etc. So, starting to engage with some conscious and release, even if it's subtle, hugely powerful. So that, in combination with kind of classic mindfulness techniques and breath, powerful triad right there.
yeah. Well, it sounded like this is so easy, right? And it is. It really is.
It's certainly simple, not
It's that
necessarily
simple.
easy, but it
So
does get
simple
easier.
that we fight it. We battle it in our head. We're like, this is so silly. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing
But
this?
only in our head, only in our
Oh,
head.
only in our head. You're so true.
And it does get easier and more
Mhm.
rewarding
Yeah.
the longer we're on the path.
Especially that breathing, that breath work and that meditation, it gets very rewarding. Especially if you're meditating and your mind wanders. That's normal. I don't think I've ever not meditated and my mind didn't wander. You know, it's kind of what we need.
Rare that
Yeah.
it doesn't. Although I will say I have attended quite a number of like long silent meditation retreats in my time, and there are moments after days and days of sitting, many, many hours, where the mind actually does stop and no thoughts intrude for even like a few minutes, and you're outside of time and space and in eternal bliss.
I would love that. I guess because me and you know, I mean, I guess like a lot of people say this too. Once you see, it's really hard to unsee. That's why it was always hard for me. I went to a church for a while there in Orlando, and through my some of my experiences, and it was really hard for me to see people leaving there every weekend, like being thrown to the wolves. And that's really why I hopped on this path. Because going through these medicines can be just an experience, but it can be a life-changing revolution if you follow a few simple things because they're really simple. They're not really that hard. We make them hard. We make them very
Absolutely.
hard.
Well said.
And sometimes about 6 or 8 hours of a little bit of fear in your head, you know, changes about 40 years of your life too. Because I think a lot of people, a lot of people don't go to these medicines because of that fact. Because oh my God, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to puke. You know what? If I could throw up for 8 hours and be the life I live today, I would do that 100 times over. So
Yeah, well worth it. Great return on investment.
great return. You're always you're always in the plant medicine community are great, aren't they? Yeah.
No,
So
indeed.
you're always so very great talking to you today. Why don't we finish up here with where you're at, what you do, how we can connect with you.
Sure. I'm not one to indulge in self-promotion. I
It's
would
okay.
rather leave it to
I
you.
am.
But my
I'll
my
self-promote
website is
you.
please do. My website is Wisdom Warrior Coaching.
Yep.
I don't have an overt statement about working with psychedelics on it, but you're welcome
Mhm.
to get in touch with me through that vessel, through that vehicle, and feel free to reference it. And I work mostly online for various reasons, for very understandable reasons, especially in regards to psychedelic integration work. And I also do preparation work for people that are doing just that, preparing to enter into it, whether it's the first time or they already have some experience, just to make sure they get the wheels rolling before they go into what might be a really, really powerful event for them. Opening up doors and windows and breathing.
Well, thank you for everything you do. Thank me, thank you, thank the men out there that are vulnerable to this because we have to be vulnerable to change our stupidity because we've been stupid for a long time.
We sure have. Yeah. You can get away with being stupid when you have the illusion of dominance and you exert dominance. But that, of
Yep,
course, is rapidly changing.
yep, that's changing. I love you, brother. We'll see you
I love you.
soon. I love everything you're doing. Ciao.